So let's talk about the assignments that we're doing for the next couple of weeks. The email and memo assignment at first, and that's going to segue into the letter assignment. So for that reason, I had you read Chapter 7 of our text that discusses how to write emails, memos, and letters. Obviously, we can't go over all the material in the chapters when we're doing these brief video talks. So let me focus in on a few things that are going to be important for crafting the rough drafts for the email memo assignment. And I'll say first that all of these discussions are important. Using professional style, making sure that your style is suited to the audience that you're attempting to reach, making sure that you are writing with intent to preserve goodwill and entice the reader, convince the reader, rather than cajole or harangue or insult in some cases the reader. But for right now, I want to talk about the structure and organization of not only emails and memos, but all of the writing that we're doing. And we'll deal with the direct pattern soon enough. Right now, let's talk about the direct pattern, which is a threefold organization of the content of the writing product. The first fold, the first area, is the main point of the message, followed by explanation of details or facts, and then ending with a goodwill closing. Does this seem familiar? Yeah, so the cover letter is actually a template for all of the writing that we'll be doing. All of the documents will have largely the same organization. In the very first section of all of our writing, you will need to articulate clearly and directly the purpose in writing. Well, except for the case of rejection letters when we get to indirect pattern, but we'll talk about that. That is followed by a body where you offer explanation and you give specific detail to support the kinds of points that you want to be making. And then you follow with a closing that is a final effort to sway the reader to your side, to convince the reader to accept what you're offering or what you're arguing for. And so, like the cover letter, there's a degree of conventional sentiment there to thank the reader, to review the material, the main point that you're trying to make here, and also give the reader some sense of the steps that would need to be taken. The text discusses openings, closings, and some considerations in developing clarity and emphasis, and we'll take a look at that next week in a little bit more detail. A couple things to be considering as you're developing the drafts for the email and memo. The use of bulleted lists to convey information. Resumes are an excellent demonstration of that kind of organization, as are the use of headings. And finally, then subject lines, something that does not appear in a resume, but you'll need to consider for both the email and the memorandum. Think of them in terms of titles that you're giving to your communications. But the discussion here will help develop that further. As far as what goes into the assignments, well, you have your textbook. We'll have next week or so to refine what it is that you come up with. The assignment is asking you to write basically the same thing, but with two different audiences in mind, with two different styles of writing in mind. So if we go back and take a look at what I've written for the email memo assignment here. The email will be a 3-paragraph email. The audience will be your classmates. The purpose will be identifying a public need for which you feel will be worth the class's time and effort to research and write up an appropriate response. I've been asking you, as part of the research and information ecosystem assignments, to consider what need there might be out there in the world for which we could develop an adequate response, whether it's a service to be provided, expertise to be assembled, a product to be developed or purchased, or properly and effectively used. It's entirely up to you and what you are able to find out there in the world. We'll do the same thing for the memo. I want the memo to be longer, and instead of the email, which is persuasive writing, which is meant to convey its information in a way to get your classmates to agree that this would be the best project to do, the email to me will instead be informative. Rather than attempting to convince me that this is a good project, I want you to write a memo that informs me what you're proposing and why, and provides me with some information about what you have provided. So as it says, we're not necessarily looking at this point for research, although you will have needed to do some reading as part of the information ecosystem and research assignments in order to get you prepared for this. You may need to go back to those to do additional reading to provide more information. But more formal use of research will begin when we do the letter assignment, for which there will be a works cited page. I pushed back the due date for the rough draft to Sunday, September 26th. I mean, you can still do it for Friday if you want, but I'm not going to be assigning peer editing groups Saturday morning. Sad to say, I'm going to wait until Monday morning to have that all done. So it doesn't make sense for me to have you guys bring it in on Friday if I'm not going to look at it until Sunday morning. Yeah, have those extra days if you want, if you need them. I've given you templates for the memo and the email. These templates should be regarded as suggestions. They're just kind of bare bones. Let's take a look. I mean, you guys have written emails, right? You know how to do this. Hopefully we'll be able to get you so you're doing it even better, but basic information is all the same. There's a from, that's you. There's a to. We're going to be writing this as if you're sending out to the entire class. So you don't necessarily need to fill these lines in. These are just there so that it looks like an email in a sense. There's the carbon copy. This goes back to the days, well, I don't need to tell you about back in the day, or the origin of carbon copy. You can look it up yourself. The carbon copy line, the CC line, is any interested party who's not the audience but still may need to receive or acknowledge this communication, and then the subject line as discussed. The memo template, once again, is just bare bones, just necessary information. You may feel free to modify or just use this one as you see fit. The to is going to be to me. The memorandum will be to me from you with the date, and a regards line, array line, which is the same thing as a subject line. Often in business correspondence, you also see a regards line or array line. That is, in effect, the title of the letter that you're sending. Subject line, the regards line here, is the title of the memorandum which you're assembling. And once you're in a professional context, assuming that memos continue to be a thing, as I've said now repeatedly, and your text as well, they're kind of a dying thing as it is because everybody uses email now. But in any case, firms have usually a set standard, set form for memorandums that you would be expected to abide by in many cases, or if not, simply create your own along the same basic lines.